Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered Voices. I'm Jack, and today we're diving deep into a topic that affects all of us, whether we realize it or not, the dark side of social media. And joining me, as always, is the insightful and ever-curious Emma. Hey, Emma!
Hey, Jack, I'm excited and a bit nervous about today's topic. Social media is such a huge part of our lives, but there's so much beneath the surface that we don't often talk about.
Absolutely, we all scroll through our feeds, share photos, and stay connected, but there's a shadow lurking in those brightly lit screens. Let's start with the obvious one, addiction. Emma, have you ever found yourself mindlessly scrolling for hours?
Oh, definitely. Sometimes I pick up my phone to check one thing, and before I know it, an hour has passed, and I've accomplished nothing. It's like time just disappears.
That's a common experience. Social media platforms are designed to keep us hooked. They use algorithms to show us content that keeps us engaged, sometimes at the expense of our well-being. This kind of addiction can lead to anxiety, depression, and even sleep disorders.
Speaking of anxiety and depression, let's talk about the comparison trap. Seeing everyone's highlight reel can make us feel like our own lives are lacking. Have you ever felt that way, Jack?
For sure, it's easy to fall into the trap of comparing our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reels. You see a friend on an amazing vacation, someone else buying a new car, and suddenly your own achievements feel small. But what we don't see is the reality behind those perfect photos.
Exactly. It's like we're all actors in a play, putting on our best performance for the audience, but we're the only ones who see our backstage mess. This can be incredibly damaging, especially for younger users who are still figuring out their identities.
And let's not forget about cyberbullying. It's so much easier to say hurtful things from behind a screen than face-to-face. Have you seen any instances of this, Emma?
Sadly, yes, I've seen friends get torn apart online over minor things. It's heartbreaking. The anonymity of social media can bring out the worst in people. It's like they forget there's a real person on the other side of the screen.
Anonymity can indeed breed cruelty, but it's not just bullying, there's also the spread of misinformation. Social media is a breeding ground for fake news, and it can be really hard to tell what's true and what's not.
That's a big one. The speed at which false information spreads is alarming. And once it's out there, it's almost impossible to completely retract. It can influence opinions, elections, and even public health.
Which brings us to another critical point, privacy. We share so much of our lives online, often without realizing how much data we're giving away. Have you ever thought about how much information about you is floating around out there, Emma?
Honestly, not as much as I should. It's scary to think about how much these platforms know about us, our likes, our dislikes, our habits. And all of that data is used to target us with ads and can even be sold to third parties.
Right, and once your data is out there, it's out there for good. There's no getting it back. It makes you think twice about what you share, doesn't it?
It really does, but Jack, we've talked a lot about the negatives. What can we do to protect ourselves and make social media a healthier place?
Great question. First, we can set boundaries for ourselves. Limit screen time, especially before bed. Curate your feed to follow accounts that inspire and uplift you, rather than those that make you feel inadequate.
And we can be mindful of what we share. Think before posting, is this something I'm comfortable with the whole world potentially seeing? Also, fact check before sharing news or information.
Absolutely, and let's remember to engage positively. Lift others up instead of tearing them down. Social media has the potential to be a force for good if we use it responsibly.
Well said, Jack. It's all about balance and awareness. Social media isn't inherently bad, but we need to navigate it with our eyes open.
Let's dive deeper into the mental health aspect. Emma, you mentioned anxiety and depression earlier. How do you think social media amplifies these issues?
I think it's a combination of factors. The constant comparison to others can make us feel inadequate. Plus, the need for validation through likes and comments can lead to anxiety. If a post doesn't perform well, it can really affect your self-esteem. And then there's FOMO, the fear of missing out. Seeing everyone else having fun can make you feel isolated and alone.
Absolutely, the validation cycle is a big one. Every like, share, or comment triggers a little dopamine hit, reinforcing the behavior and making us crave more. It's a vicious cycle, and when the likes don't come, it can feel like a personal failure.
Exactly. It's like we're constantly seeking approval from others, rather than being content with ourselves. This can lead to a lot of unnecessary stress and self-doubt.
And this isn't just speculation. Studies have shown a clear link between heavy social media use and increased rates of anxiety and depression, particularly among teenagers. It's a real issue that's affecting an entire generation.
Which brings up another point, the impact on young people. They're growing up in a world where social media is the norm. How do you think that's shaping them?
It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, they're more connected and informed than ever before. But on the other hand, they're more exposed to cyberbullying, unrealistic beauty standards, and the constant pressure to curate a perfect online persona. It's a lot for anyone to handle, especially for someone still developing their sense of self.
It makes me worrying about their mental and emotional resilience. Growing up with a constant barrage of filtered images and highlight reels can distort their reality and expectations. It can make normal life seem dull and unfulfilling by comparison.
Absolutely, and then there's the issue of sleep. Blue light from screens can mess with our sleep patterns, and staying up late scrolling through feeds can lead to sleep deprivation, which has its own set of negative effects.
Right, poor sleep can exacerbate anxiety and depression, create problems with focus and learning, and even affect physical health. It's a cascading effect.
Let's pivot to the topic of misinformation. It's alarming how quickly fake news can spread on social media. What do you think drives this?
I think it's a mix of algorithms and human nature. Algorithms prioritize content that gets a lot of engagement, and sensational headlines tend to get more clicks. People are also more likely to share information that confirms their existing beliefs, which creates echo chambers where misinformation can thrive.
And the consequences can be severe. We've seen how misinformation can influence elections, fuel conspiracy theories, and even impact public health, like during the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's frightening how a single piece of false information can cause so much damage. And once it's out there, it's hard to undo the harm. People are less likely to see corrections or retractions than the original misleading post.
That's true, and speaking of impact, let's discuss privacy. We often share a lot without realizing how it can be used. Have you ever been surprised by a targeted ad that was eerily accurate?
Oh, definitely. It's creepy when you mention something in a conversation and then see an ad for it online. It makes you wonder just how much of your life is being tracked.
It's not just ads. Our data can be sold to third parties, used for profiling, and even exploited for identity theft. And it's not just about what we post. It's also about what we like, who we follow, and how we interact online.
It's not just ads. Our data can be sold to third parties, used for profiling, and even exploited for identity theft. And it's not just about what we post, it's also about what we like, who we follow, and how we interact online. That's why it's so important to be cautious. We need to think twice before sharing personal information and be aware of privacy settings. But it's tough because these platforms are designed to collect as much data as possible.
Exactly, and it's a reminder that we're the product in this ecosystem. If we're not paying for the service, our data is what's being monetized. It's a sobering thought.
It really is. So, what can we do about all of this? How can we use social media more responsibly?
Setting boundaries is key. Limiting screen time, especially before bed, can help. Curate your feed to follow accounts that inspire you rather than ones that make you feel bad about yourself. Also, take regular breaks from social media to disconnect and recharge. And we can educate ourselves about privacy. Use strong, unique passwords and able two-factor authentication, and be mindful of the permissions you grant to apps. Also, be critical of the information you consume and share. Fact-check before spreading news.
Absolutely, and remember to engage positively. Let's use social media to lift each other up rather than tear each other down. Small acts of kindness can go a long way.
Well said, it's all about being mindful and intentional with our online presence. Social media isn't going away, so we need to learn how to navigate it in a healthy way.
Exactly. It's about finding balance and protecting our mental health while staying connected. Thanks for the deep dive, Jack. This has been eye-opening.
Thanks, Emma. It's been a great discussion. And to our listeners, take care of yourselves and each other out there in the digital world.
That's all for today's episode. Stay tuned for more insightful conversations on Unfiltered Voices. Until next time, stay curious and stay kind.
Bye, everyone.
Bye!